Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we're going to take a fully spoilerly look at Transformers EarthSpark, Season 1, Episode 6, Traditions. The title on this one was Layered. Now, as usual, there will be a short spoiler-free section before we get into the nitty-gritty details. This was another banger of an episode writing-wise. Every scene is doing something. Every surprise and twist ties back to either some moment earlier in the episode or back to a story point in G1. Nor are those G1 ties strictly member berries. They were just world-building elements that make sense in EarthSpark, given what we saw in G1. For instance, back in G1, we saw magic crystals in Peru that could capture the power of the Earth itself. Wizards wielded actual magic, and also gunpowder, but the magic could warp time itself, and there were honest do-goodness fire-breathing dragons that sent Starscream packing back in the day. That is to say that G1 has a tradition of using everything and the kitchen sink to make their stories interesting, and often treated the fantastical with absent-minded acceptance. Instead of just ripping the dragon from G1, however, EarthSpark integrates the concept of accepted fantastic elements, and it works wonders. Again, back in G1, there was an entire episode that I felt rather fond of as I got older and got a job in the national parks. That is, I got many jobs in the endless battle against invasive species, of which the most serious were often vines, with thorns or without. There is a list of vines from Himalayan blackberries to Japanese knotweed to simple bindweed that wreak havoc on the ecosystems I was fighting to protect. The writers of G1 actually thought scientifically about what the consequences of flight-capable aliens traipsing all over on and off the Earth at whim would be, and there was a whole episode centered around dealing with an invasive alien vine that Cosmo dragged in one day. That concept is referenced in this episode, and given Ranger Malto's job description, I don't think that's the last we'll see of it. But our beloved Ranger Malto wasn't in this episode because it was somebody else's time to shine, and we are about to jump right into spoilers. So, to give you time to click away, and if you don't want any spoilers, you can check out the links below the video to get yourself a copy of Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google, Kobo by Rakuten, Powell's Books, pretty much everywhere books are sold. So, what mythical beast do we have in this episode? The Wakwak, a terrifying creature of feather and blood, perfectly appropriate for a Transformers universe because of its supposed shape-shifting abilities. Sometimes this Wakwak looks like a common crow. Sometimes it's a giant crow with leathery wings and a feminine face. In some legends, it is the familiar of a vampire. In some legends, it is the vampire itself, shape-shifted into that horrible shape. And most terrifyingly of all for our beloved protagonists, treated as a simple fact of reality by Bumblebee. "You have a Wakwak in Witwicky?" he demands in annoyance. So, canonically, Bumblebee has faced this bloodthirsty menace. But, real or not in this universe, as the Wakwak may be, the story framing what it did was what did it for me. Whoever wrote and directed this episode has to have children. It opens up with Pop Malto reading his two human children the myth of the Wakwak, as later as we learn, because the signs of the Wakwak walking around are about. And Pop Malto is getting into the story in a way that only a dad really can when reading his favorite bedtime story to the kids. The animation of his facial expressions, it was priceless. The way the shadows fell, how the children tried to feign unconcern as his voice dropped into a whisper. This is the story time as I remember it as a child. Scenes like this are why I can forgive every obvious cost-cutting animation trick, from the tree explosion effects to the copy-pasted photographs on the wall going up the stairs. Yes, if you look, there's two of the exact same photograph of Ranger Malto, one at the bottom of the stairs and one about halfway up. Anyway, this was a deep expansion of Pop Malto's character, because we haven't seen much of him yet in the series. You can tell that whoever created his character didn't just tape the title doctor to his name and leave it at that. They based him on someone they knew. Have you ever been to a university and dealt with a real-life doctor of history? One of the bookish fellows who seem to lurk about the library stacks like some kind of cryptid until you get them talking about this naval battle or that cultural impact the little pink bows on King Louis XIV wore on his dainty French feet. Or, more pertinently to this episode, about the myths that have been passed down in the culture word of mouth for generations about shape-shifting home invaders that can only be known by their smell. The little gnomes who live between the layers of reality out on the tundra, or the blood worms of the Gobi Desert. That is who Pop Malto reveals himself to be in this episode. Yes, he is a trained academic whose decades of experience as a researcher have left him with some personal habits that make him a bit off-putting at social gatherings. I don't care if it is primary source. No one is reading my diary. But at heart, Pop Malto is an enthusiast. He loves to gather knowledge and then to spread it. So, here we have a good academic, a great father, and that's not all. It is revealed that the 4x4 lifting was not a fluke of animation. There's a true dad bod under that maroon dress shirt and those patent leather shoes. And now I have to refrain from going on about the stick work. As soon as Pop Malto pulled out those sticks of his, well, to be perfectly honest, my first reaction was to cringe and shame as looking at those sticks drove home to me how many months, years it's been since I picked up my rattan sticks and did my stick drills. I don't even know if I can remember the 3-point drill, let alone the 5-point drill. You see, my Kung Fu instructor studied all over the world, drawing the system he taught us from every corner of the globe. And in the front entryway of the dojo, he had an umbrella stand, one of the big ones they have at libraries that can take up to 100 umbrellas in a pinch. But this one was not for umbrellas. This was for sticks, just like the two Pop Malto was holding. The ones in the stand were the spares for those of us who had forgotten our own, which I've done a few times. These sticks were taped, battered, cracking, fraying. You see, they were made of a special kind of bamboo and specially treated. Those sticks cost upwards of $12 a pop when I bought mine. Who knows what they cost now? You see, my Sifu had studied the Filipino stick fighting and thought it a fundamental enough skill to make it central to his training regimen. So I was delighted to see my old friend, the 2-stick drill, on the screen. My wrist bones tingled and my fingers smarted in sympathy. And as I cut paragraphs of exposition out of this episode review, I realized I will have to dedicate an entire review just to stick fighting. But it wasn't Pop Malto's obviously geeky cred and enthusiasm that stood out in this episode. It wasn't his somewhat questionable mastery of the 2-stick drill. It wasn't even his admirable dedication to finding primary sources. I call him Pop Malto and not Doc Malto for a reason. He's a good doctor of mythology or history. He is a great father. You could see it in how he reacts to his children and how his children react to him. They don't just love him because he's their father, they respect him because he is, well, respectable. This is a man who can hoist an armload of lumber like it's nothing. You try that. You go find two 6-foot 4x4s and 2 6-foot 2x4s, and you try to pick those all up in one hand. He can swing a rattan stick hard enough to warp metal. Sure, he might have a bit of a layer of late nights and sausages around his middle, but there is hardened muscle under that. Muscle maintained not because his job demands it, but because he has a discipline to deliberately keep it there out of a sense of duty to his family and tradition. This episode showed that Pop Malto is so soft and gentle because he chooses to be so. Under the bookish squint and the city flab, there's a warrior, not asleep, just resting. And I must say, for mental taste buds stained with a diet of incompetent sitcom dads, Pop Malto is a refreshing change. Here's to seeing more like him and the latest John Robinson of Lost in Space. These might be only 2 examples, but the peaceful warrior dad seems to be coming back in style. Pop Malto wasn't the only surprising well-rounded character who we get to see in this episode. So, here's some more. Let's listen to them. Cartoonishly evil. What image does your mind pull up when you hear those words? Villainous billionaires planning to dump toxic waste into the Bay for kicks and giggles, the Dark Lord in the leather cape ordering a cage full of villagers lowered into the comically oversized vat, or perhaps the white-coated mad scientist flying into a rage and destroying his minions and after one of his own mistakes. Well, each of these images of evil, for the sake of over-the-top evil, came from cartoons, much like this one. Thus the name, cartoonishly evil, meaning some one-dimensional character doing something outrageously evil just for the sake of it, often with little or no thought of personal gain or of the consequences, kicking puppies on a grand scale. Well, here in Mandroid, we have a classic cartoon villain. He is missing an arm, and he has the eyebrows that are clearly labeled evil on the page on how to draw eyebrows in those how to draw manga books. He has a maniacal laugh. He is overly dramatic. He lurks about in dark purple layers. He has minions. He is opposing the good guys. He kidnapped the cheerful child appeal character and tied them to chairs. Clearly, this is Mandroid. He is cartoonishly evil. In fact, that's how I referred to him in previous episode. Except, well, he's not. I mean, he clearly is a cartoon villain. But, one, he's not wrong. The Transformers are an invasive species, and as even the G1 show admitted, they are a vector for more serious invasive species. Their presence on Earth does cause problems. I would not be the least surprised if a Decepticon was the one who took his arm. The show is, of course, painting him as obviously in the wrong, but then this episode took the time to show that he is just. He is fair to minions. He is just in his judgment of himself and his accomplishments. When he makes a mistake, he admits it. The villain is being rounded out, no longer one-dimensional, no longer cartoonishly evil. And that is very interesting to me. We are supposed to hate this character. Clearly, we are introduced to him as he vivisects a living sapient being with calm detachment. Then the show is taking the time to display his virtues. This is intriguing. This is not an uncommon direction for character development in more mature shows, but I'll be roasted over coals before I thought we'd see it in this one. I am delighted to be wrong, and once more intrigued. What do you think? What was the inciting incident that drove Mandroid to become what he is? Leave your theories below in a comment and hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out, my wonderful viewers.